Thank you all for joining us. The Columbian Editorial Board is pleased to welcome Greg Kimsey, candidate for Clark County Auditor and the incumbent in the office. I'm Greg Jane, the editorial page editor, and I will let the other editorial board members introduce themselves. Craig?
Hi, I'm Craig Brown. I'm the editor of the Columbian and a member of the editorial board.
And Jody?
Hi, Greg. You know who I am, just on the editorial board.
And then Ben and Colleen.
Ben Campbell, publisher of the Columbian and member of the editorial board.
And hi, I'm Colleen Keller. I'm the assistant news editor and also member of the editorial board.
And I should mention that the challenger in this race, Brett Simpson, informed me just a couple of moments ago that he is not available at this time. We will try and connect with him later, but we're hoping to have both candidates simultaneously. And Mr. Simpson had earlier confirmed that he would be joining us at this time. And as mentioned before, we are recording this. We will post it unedited on our website and our YouTube channel. And with that, we'll turn to Greg Kimsey. Please take 1 to 2 minutes, introduce yourself, and explain why you are running for re-election, and then we'll move on to specific issues regarding the race.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. These interviews provide very valuable information for voters as they make decisions this November. For almost 24 years, I have served the citizens of Clark County as their elected county auditor. My work has been recognized by the Secretary of State when they named me Auditor of the Year. The mainstream Republicans have recognized me as a local elected officials of the year. The Greater Vancouver Chamber of Commerce recognized me as a Statesman of the Year. Prior to serving as county auditor, I was the chief financial officer for Vancouver Oil Company. Prior to that, I was a vice president in the U.S. Bancorp's investment banking division. Immediately after college, I worked for a couple years as a union carpenter. I'm a certified election administrator, a chartered financial analyst. I received my MBA from Portland State University and a business degree from the University of Washington. I'm a proud graduate of the Vancouver Public Schools. I have extensive history of community involvement. I'm a founding board member of the Columbia Land Trust. I'm former board members of the YWCA, the YMCA, the Foundation for the Vancouver Public Schools. I currently serve as a commissioner for the Vancouver Housing Authority. Also served as a youth soccer coach. There's many other elements I've been involved with over the years in our community. My wife of 42 years and I were born and raised in Clark County. We have 2 kids. The kids are also graduates of Vancouver Public Schools. We're thrilled that 2 months ago we became grandparents for the first time. I'm running for re-election because I want to ensure that elections continue to be conducted pursuant to county, state, and federal laws in an open, transparent, responsible, secure manner that produce accurate election results citizens can have confidence in. I understand that elections are the foundation on which our government rests, and I'm deeply committed to conducting elections with the highest level of integrity.
Great. Well, thank you. Let's start with there have been a lot of questions and some doubts floated regarding the integrity of those elections. How do you answer those?
Well, before I get to that, Greg, what I would like to do is share with you some of the more egregious actions and statements that my opponent has made recently.
Okay.
Beginning with a appearance he made on Heidi St. John's podcast less than a year ago. Let me share this with you.
A highly orchestrated national syndicate. Really, it's a crime syndicate figuring out how to steal our elections across the entire republic.
Hope you could hear that. If you didn't, what he said was, oh, good. What he said, though, was a highly orchestrated national crime syndicate figuring out how to steal elections across the entire republic. It then goes on to imply that I work for this highly orchestrated national crime syndicate. And then since that time, he's also said that I work for the establishment elite, bureaucratic elite, and politicians, quote, above me, unquote, that I don't work for we the people. In addition to filing 2 lawsuits against me, he calls me a liar, cheater, and corrupt, and that I have committed federal crimes. He also recently said, I have yet to find anyone who likes mail ballots. He says, we don't control our own voter rolls. Sometimes he says, George Soros controls those voter rolls. Sometimes he says the Electronic Elections Registration Information Center, or ERIC, controls those. He was asked the question, how do we get Soros out of managing our election rolls? His response, we have to build a parallel system to prove what they are doing in the bad system. He has said voting machines are run by the companies, not by our people. He says the output, election results, is totally controlled. You've installed people that we didn't want there. The 2020 election, he says, they stole the government from us. It's treason. It's treason. If it's not treason, I don't know what would be. Goes on to say they, and I'm not sure who they is. I was hoping today possibly we could ask him to define who they are. But he says they know who you are likely to vote for and know whose ballots to steal. He says relying on postmarks allows them to drag out counting and gives them the opportunity to make adjustments in the election. He says when you turn your ballot in early, they're able to adjust the cheat because they have all our data and voting history. He says they, again, they do a risk analysis to determine how much to cheat. And for the auditor's race, they're going to go all out to cheat. He says, if I was auditor, I would say, come in with your ID and we'll put a stamp on the envelope saying your ID was checked. And we know
would that be legal?
You're jumping ahead of me, Greg. Very confident that the Department of Justice and Attorney General would see that as a pretty good example of voter intimidation and a violation of multiple crimes of laws. It gets more egregious. When asked what his plans are for after when he's elected, he says, state law requires me to mail ballots, but it doesn't require me to use machines to count them. I'm going to hand count ballots, and that will be the official results. Of course, election results are prohibited to be known before 8:00 p.m. election day, so he couldn't begin hand counting ballots until after 8:00 p.m. So a scenario where you have, for this election, at least 160,000 ballots, that each of those ballots have about 30 offices, races, issues on them. Pretty remarkable event to see that done before certification is required. And I guarantee you that machine counts are more accurate than hand counts.
Now, I want to go back. You mentioned he had filed 2 lawsuits against you or against the county. What was the outcome of those?
No, me, Greg.
Okay, they were personally against you.
Personally against me, as well as in the first one, the one he filed last September, he also names 30 people who work in the elections office. Doesn't name them, but he puts them in a category.
What were the outcomes of those suits?
Well, unfortunately, those lawsuits continue to be in the courts. Unfortunately, the lawsuit they filed most recently, the one where he demonstrates his lack of understanding of election laws, when he did ask the judge for a temporary injunction, the judge ruled that he was not going to issue that temporary injunction because he didn't believe there was, I'm paraphrasing here, but there was not merit to the arguments that were being made. And I would love nothing more than for my opponent to take further action in that lawsuit or to ask the judge to dismiss it, but it still sits in the courts as we are here today. The federal lawsuit, which alleges without any evidence whatsoever that in 2020 that I took votes from Donald Trump and gave those votes to Joe Biden, also sits in federal lawsuit in federal court, and again would sure appreciate the federal judge taking action on that. In that, I might add, in that lawsuit, he asks for Jovan Pulitzer. I'm not sure how you pronounce that name. Jovan Pulitzer, who is this guy that says he has this kinematic technology. Okay, so go look up Jovan Pulitzer. They wanted to hire Jovan Pulitzer to come into Clark County and do something.
So why hasn't the county taken that step for a forensic audit?
So we audit every election. Every election is audited. And the term forensic audits in the elections world is not well defined. But what I do know is the audit we conduct, that's conducted again under state law for every election, that audit is conducted with the participation of the representatives of the two major political parties and the League of Women Voters. It's conducted in a public setting. So forensic, while it's not well defined in the elections world, forensic really implies that the process or the information is something could be admissible in the court as evidence. Well, the audit that we conduct, again, with the participation of these three representatives from the three organizations, League of Women Voters, Democratic Party, and Republican Party, in a public setting, I'm absolutely confident that the results of that audit can be introduced as evidence into court.
Now, and when you say this audit takes place in a public setting, what exactly is that audit? Is every ballot counted? Is a certain number counted?
So state law sets out a couple options for the audit. One of those audits is a manual audit of 6 batches of ballots that are randomly selected, and then the machine, the ballot processing system, will process those 600 ballots. We select one race, kind of the highest profile race, and then we manually count the results on the paper ballots for that race, and then compare those results to the results out of the ballot processing software and hardware. So it's a small sample, but it's a very deep sample. So it's
and I know those results for each election are on the county elections website for going back.
They are, and I'll take the opportunity to again say those audits have been perfect every time we've done them for many years now.
Now, and that it seems that is much different in some states where they don't have a hard copy of the ballots. While some people complain about mail-in ballots here, at least that provides a hard copy that can be checked. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I'm not sure how many states don't use any paper ballots. That's never ever decreasing number. I know that. The direct recording electronic voting machines are not something that I'm in favor of. That having that paper ballot is a really important element of security and accountability in our system.
Sure. I'm going to move on. Craig, do you have a question?
Yeah, I've got some questions. So, Greg, you were the Clark County Auditor in 2020 and in 2016. Is that correct?
I was.
So, so were there major changes in any of the procedures used by voters between 2016 and 2020? So did you change, they were mail-in ballots, they were paper ballots, they were tallied by a certain software that you have in your office and all those things, right?
No changes as far as voters. In fact, the voting system we use, which is provided to us by Hart InterCivic, that was selected after a very extensive procurement process, including, I'll say that. The Hart InterCivic, they had introduced a new version of the Verity software that we were using at the time, and they had been encouraging us to upgrade to the more recent version, but we made a very considered decision to not upgrade to that new system until after the 2020 general election, because we're risk-averse people and we don't like change unless it unless we're really convinced it'll make a big improvement. So, Craig, in kind of general response to your question, certainly for voters, there were no changes. There were a lot more ballot drop boxes in 2020 than there were in 2016. A lot more ballot drop boxes.
Yeah, that's right. So, and if I recall correctly, Donald J. Trump won the 2016 presidential election. Is that your recollection also?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So, and were there any allegations of fraud leveled at you or the Clark County Auditor's Office in 2016 as a result of Donald J. Trump winning the presidential election?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have a question?
Yeah, I'm curious, Greg, what have you and your staff been facing over these past 2 years? Have you been encountering hostility? I mean, people following you? Have there been incidences of personal intimidation that you all have been dealing with?
Well, it's been a challenging couple of years for sure. I've not had personal intimidation or personal, I've had a lot of people with misinformation who are very convinced of that misinformation. The frontline election staff, they are the people who get the brunt of this. They, with some frequency, and most specifically our elections director, because when someone calls up and they're really emotional and misinformed, they often end up talking with the election director. And I always tell them, I'm happy to have them, tell them to call me. I'm happy to talk to anybody about this stuff. But the frontline staff typically forward those on to our elections director. So it's our elections director who has really taken the brunt of this, and it's been really unfortunate. There's not been any specific threats of violence. There's been implications of threats of violence, but if there was a specific threat of violence, you can be assured we would be immediately contacting law enforcement. The FBI actually has a kind of a special task force on this topic. So yeah, it's been a challenging couple of years.
Well, you have had personal attacks though by your opponent.
I have. Yeah, as I said earlier, I've been called corrupt. I've been called a cheater. I've been called a liar. I've been accused by him of committing 2 federal crimes, 2 lawsuits, both of which are without merit.
Greg, do you want to talk just a little bit about what other functions the county auditor does? Elections is actually not the main thing. I mean, it's just one of several things the county auditor does, and you've been quite innovative over your career in doing other things.
Well, thank you, Craig. I prompts me to unfortunately share with you another recent statement by my opponent in the League of Voters Forum. He said that 95% of the auditor's job is elections. He says the other issues become almost like saying, I need to worry about cleaning the toilets even though the house is on fire. And so, in my opinion, being responsible for keeping track of over $700 million that comes into the county every year and is expended by the county every year, conducting performance audits of county departments, assisting managers to be more efficient and effective in carrying out their responsibilities, ensuring the public's assets are protected by ensuring the proper internal controls are in place and monitored by management. Issuing marriage licenses is an important function. Recording legal documents that have to be retained forever. These are all important government functions that I place a very high value on, that I think most people would conclude that's much more complex than cleaning toilets. Of the elections, of the auditor's staff, of the 44 people working the auditor's staff, we only have 6 full-time employees in the elections office. The remaining 38 work in these other areas that I just kind of mentioned. So it's not just elections. Although over the past 2 years, I spent a lot of time in elections.
Well, and obviously,
not 95% though.
And you've spent a lot of time on it because these issues persist. People bring that up. But with all of the allegations surrounding the 2020 election, why do you think have they been so roundly rejected by the courts?
Well, I guess I won't speak on behalf of the courts, except to conclude that there's been no merit in the arguments brought forth. I know certainly in the 2 lawsuits that I've been directly involved with, I can say with complete confidence, there's my own, I'm not an attorney, don't get legal advice, but these 2 lawsuits have been filed against me are completely without merit. I would like nothing more than the judge to actually put his or her attention to them and get them completed.
So what role can your office play in restoring or bolstering public confidence in the process?
Well, we think about that a lot, and the number one, the most important responsibility, most important thing we can do is to continue to conduct elections in a transparent, responsible, secure, fair manner, producing accurate results. I will share with you that our number one goal throughout the auditor's office, whether you're getting your new license plates for your car, or new title, or you're getting a marriage license, or you're receiving your ballot, is that every interaction you have with the auditor's office, that you end up with more confidence in your government because of that interaction. That's a strong kind of mission statement we have in the auditor's office. Every interaction we have with the public is an opportunity to improve their confidence, or the opposite, but we want to focus on the positive.
Any other questions?
The other thing I'd say too, Greg, is certainly overall, the way we do that is continue to conduct elections, the way we conduct ourselves. But on a kind of a personal basis, I'm willing to talk to anybody for as long as they want to talk about any aspect of the auditor's office. And as you said, as we talked here, the elections is a thing that is of the greatest interest to the public right now. Certainly, I'm happy to talk to anybody for as long as they want to talk about the elections. My number, 521-6685. That's 360-521-6685.
Great. Any other questions? Greg, give us your final pitch for why you should be reelected, and feel free to mention any endorsements.
Well, thank you. So I'm very grateful for the support that I received in the primary from more than 70% of the voters. I'm honored to be endorsed or recommended by former Secretaries of State Ralph Monroe and Sam Reed, former Clark County Auditor Liz Luce, mainstream Republicans of Washington, the Clark County Democratic Party, Vancouver Education Association, Vancouver firefighters, several Republican and Democratic state legislators, many county officials, including the current and the former sheriffs and the prosecuting attorney, mayors and council members from Washougal, Vancouver, Richfield, Battleground, La Center, and many other Republican and Democratic and nonpartisan elected officials, many other organizations, and hundreds of individuals. You can find a full list of my endorsements and other information online at gregkimsey.com. After I'm reelected, I commit to continuing to conduct elections in a transparent, secure, accountable manner, producing accurate election results. And I will continue to advocate for changes in Washington law to improve the Washington election system. Again, anyone with questions regarding Clark County's elections process is encouraged to contact me. I'm accessible and responsive. I thank the Columbian Editorial Board for this opportunity. I'd be honored to receive your endorsement. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And again, just for anybody who might view this, Mr. Simpson was invited. He had agreed to meet with us at this time, but informed us this morning he is unavailable. So anyway, Mr. Kimsey, thank you for joining us, and best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.